Let's start it. Yeah. So far, those who are regular, they may know about it. We have conducted materiality imbalance tests, or you know, ways to play materially imbalanced games and trying to win them. But from today onwards, we are going to only focus on the materiality concept with reference to difference in pawns. Okay, we are not going to focus on piece difference endgames now from now on, because piece difference are considered to be elementary, and elementary is being done for the first 14 days. And from now on, I think the preparation should be more curated towards what is to be achieved realistically in the tournament. That's why we are more focused towards pawn difference endgames now. And to start this off, the easiest pawn difference, uh, what should I say, endgame, is the above position here, which is knight. Both sides have knight, and one player has a majority of two pawns, and other has only two pawns. White has four pawns. So theoretically, white should win this because he has two extra pawns. What he should do is he should ideally swap g6. Let me show you here. What white should do is, sorry, this is the endgame studies. I will just share the link, or you can just give me your IDs so that I could add you in the studies as well if you are not added. Okay, so our aim is to bring this position like this. I have given today's tournament position as this, where you have 1, 2, 3, and 4, f7, g6, knight e6, and knight b2, along with the kings, obviously. This is the position, and we have to systematically reduce it to this position. This is an illustrative position only. Here, if you count the pawns, there are only three: 1, 2, 3, and here it's 4 versus 2. We means white, because white has to win this. So white has to convert this position to this sort of pattern, where he is having three pawns and his opponent is having only one pawn. Okay, this is just for reference, but this is the idea. And thereafter, after some moves, position should convert it like this, where white clear cut has two extra pawns, black has a knight, just one sec, and white also has a knight. Okay, who has joined? Yeah, Danish can come in. So this is the idea of this session for today. So we will start from here, then we'll go to here. We will not discuss this. We will just add this everybody here only, and then this position, and finally pawn promotion and queen. Okay. I have not prepared any material for this because I am going to show you live that how this can be done efficiently without dropping the points. By the way, now this session, I mean, now the opportunity for black also arises to draw. For example, let's say you are playing a higher rated player. Okay. So he must be proficient in techniques than you. Do you agree or not? I hope you agree with it. So he will try to do a lot of trickery and stuff, and try to induce you with certain tactical motives. And through that, he can also defend this. Okay. So I will tell you, if you are playing black here, there is no reason to get disheartened. We can fight, and we can fight well as well. So I will try to show you both best possible defense and the best possible continuation, and what can be done afterwards. So let's get started. Introductions are done fully. Here it's white to move, and first move that occurs to my mind is knight to d3. You may ask why. Because knight to c4 is also very good. Both moves are actually equally proficient, but knight to a4 does not solve any purpose because it just reroutes the knight to a very corner square. And remember this quote that knight on the rim is dim. Okay, there is a simple quote: known as night on the rim is dim. Rim means corner. Night on the corner is always a gloomy place to be. For the night, the corners are always gloomy. I mean, not always, in most of the situations. Like for this situation, it's a very bad thing to place the night on a dark A4 without any reason, without any forced reason. And night d1 also does not make much of a sense because you are just wasting your time to go here, then go here, and go here. I mean, d1, c3, e4. That's the only logic you can explain it. But when we have an opportunity to go to the center, we can go knight d3. There is a slight preference for knight d3 because it aims to go for knight f4 and ask whether he wants to trade it or not. If your opponent is too scared, he may also trade it and give you an easy win. But if he is not, then probably he will try to play on. But it's just a testing kind of thing. And here you may or may not have less time. If you have less time, just try to exchange the pieces and try to protect your pawns. That's the only major thing you have to be considered. Consider in this position. Okay. So knight d3. Let's say black goes. What's the best move that I can play? I can think of knight c7 or knight g5, aiming to go for knight e4 here. So I play knight g5 here. Both knight c7 is also fine. And knight c5, you can see it's not possible because knight takes c5 takes it. And knight d4 and f4 does not make any sense. Knight f8 and d8 also don't make much of a sense because you are going back and you are not giving any future for this knight. So I think, let me just delete this all. Knight g5 is the best move. Okay. Let's say white goes h4, attacking this knight on g5. Now knight goes to e4 because this is the sensible square, and knight first of all went to g5 only because it wants to come to e4 here. Okay, so knight e4. There is not much of a thinking involved here. You can go f3, good move, or you can also go king f3, but then knight d2 check comes in and you have to contend with a lot of stuff here. Then for example f6, and the things go on here, knight c5, and then king f7, and then knight e4, exchange, trying to exchange this. Black obviously would not allow this, so he goes knight c4 and stopping knight d6 check, and then king g4 is not possible. Can you say why king g4 is a blunder here? Can anyone answer me why King G4 is blunder? You can unmute or put it in the chat.
If black moves f5, it would be a check and also wins the knight.
Sorry, sorry.
If black plays f5, pawn
Ha.
f5, oh,
Thank you. That's the correct move. And King G4, I will just mark it as a blunder because Black gets this F5 position. And see, just like that, just by maneuvering the knight here and there, Black gets a solid position and a very good chance to draw this game. And this gets converted into. Now, let me just show you one more thing here. Oh, sorry. This. Yeah. Now this gets converted into a irregular, irregular endgame of knight versus three pawns, if you notice. And this, I told you that this is a draw, and if white stumbles further, then black can even get a win here. Okay, but so far it's a draw. I mean, with perfect play of white, it or with a decent play, it is a draw. You can just assume it. And draw is kind of sealed here, and black can be a bit relief, but he still has to be very accurate to hold this down. Our play is made easier. From a winning position, white goes to a potentially drawn position. That's the only key issue. So let's go f3, knight d2, and maybe we can go e4 now, trying to advance the pawn or trying to bring the king to f2 and then e3 and so on. Okay, so knight c4, stopping this e3 square, I mean stopping this king to come to e3. Anyways, white goes king f2. Now it's time to bring the king up the board. Okay, king f6. Why? Because it also has to join battle sometime or the other. In this position, it's also a good idea to go f5. Is it good or bad? I mean, I feel it's good idea, but what do you think? Is it a good or bad thing to do? In general, it is always better to exchange as many pawns as possible so that the knight does not get overworked and can focus fully on defending the position as much as possible. So f5, is it a good move or a bad move? Just take 10 seconds and put y or n, or you can just unmute as well. No issues. Any answers, guys? Or I will just move forward if you don't have any, I mean, answer for that. No issues. We can just cover it up as well. No issues for that as. But just think over it. Is it a good move to play f5 here? Bad for black. Why? Can you just unmute and just tell me one sample line? I mean, just two, three moves. That's enough.
After e takes f5,
Okay.
then
It
g
is a
takes f5,
okay. Thereafter,
then g4, just to
g4.
trade the
Then we
other
can
pawns.
trade with fg4. Okay.
Yes, either we can trade, or if black pushes, then we can take by knight.
Uh, take okay. Fine. But in general, okay, you're correct. But in general, does trading not help black? I mean, lesser the number of pawns, easier for the knight to defend it. I think it's good for the knight to have lesser number of pawns to worry about. But nevertheless, f5 is a dubious move. I'll just mark it dubious because it is not clear whether black can win it. I mean, black has a realistic attempt of drawing it or not. Nevertheless, king f6 looks like the best move here because it does not allow e5. I mean, e5 is not a problem because then you have knight takes, and king takes. Now that's 3 versus 2, but still white is better and probably winning this. Let me see the eval bar. It's like plus 7.1 because it's a king pawn endgame, and we have discussed king pawn once. In king pawn endgames, even if you have an extra pawn, it's kind of winning. And here there are a lot of more concepts as well which are bit more advanced, and I hope you know this, but no issues. e5 is a brilliant trick here which can be played by white, and if we are not careful, we may also take this pawn with the knight, but then problem is white gets the win quite easily. That's the only problem. So king f6, e5 check. Maybe king f5 is possible here. Is it? I think g4 check and then king e6 comes in. Yeah. King f5 is possible, or directly also king e6 is also playable. But in that case, then he comes f4, and you have king f5, king f3, and knight d2 check. You know, forcing the king to come off here. He may come to e2. Then you have something like knight e4, attacking this g3 pawn. Am I going too fast? I mean, is it comprehensible till now? If anybody has any questions, please feel free to stop me at any point of time. If I had missed any line or made a blunder, please point it out as well. No issues. So the main point is king e6 looks like the best move here. Okay, knight takes e5 is a blunder. I will just mark it as a blunder because knight takes e5 and king takes and king e3. This is a winning position for white, completely winning. We'll just put it as plus minus. White is winning here. Okay. Plus minus means white is winning, and minus plus means black is winning. Here the notations are given. You can just follow them. And here we have king e6, which makes me the best candidate to defend here. So king f5 and king f3, knight d2 check, king e2, and then knight e4, followed by king f3, knight d2, and you can just try to repeat the moves here. And if he comes king g2 here, you can try to play something like king e4, or even king g4 is also fine. Okay, king e4 mein there is knight c5 check. You can come to f5 again, or d5, both are equally good. And then white can come to f2, because now you cannot come to knight to e4 here, because c5 control is there. These are all little bit like imprecise, or these are a little bit tricky to follow, but that's how you can just prolong the game as much as possible. I am covering it for both the sides because it's important to defend this position as well if it occurs in a game. That's it. So here, knight c4 is the best play by black, and white has to be really, really careful not to overdo the things here. He can go something like knight b3, aiming for this check, but then again king e4 comes, and king e2, aiming to go for knight d2 check, and then knight e3 may be possible to come for knight f5 and then to g3. So here we can go a very tricky move, knight d2, king d4, and maybe king f3 here, forcing the knight to e4. Then knight goes to f5, knight goes to e4, and the knight is reaching d6 here, and white is clearly winning. Okay, so let's say black goes king d5. You have something like knight to g5 maybe, then knight to h6, g4, covering off this f5 square, and then aiming to push h5. Okay, let me just go backwards a little bit from this point. Yeah, here the deadlock, white tries to break the deadlock by going knight b3 here, because he wants to go knight d4. Then goes black goes king e4, white goes king e2 to fork this knight from trying to exchange the knight. That's the only thing. Here black may try to allow this, but it's not good. I will show you one trick here. Okay, let's say black goes any random move. I mean, black also doesn't have any random moves to play, but suppose that any random move he makes. Knight d3 was the best move I made, but any random move, say f6. I mean, here it's not, or just you can play f5 and forget that n percent is not there. What happens is you have knight d2 check, and then if you trade and come to f3, this pawn marches forward. Or if there is, suppose a pawn on e6, then what you can do is you can try to break open with h5, and ideas like that follow. But it's a bit difficult to show here, but I will try to you know send some positions like this. So here he goes knight e3. Knight e3 aims to go for f5 and attack g3. Okay, so here we go knight d2 check, and king d4, king f3, stopping. I mean, you can go knight f5 also, but this g3 is defended. And I discussed this concept yesterday. This king f3 moves is known as prophylactic move, which oversees a threat, and prophylactic moves means a move which oversees a threat once and prepares for it if, to deal in the future. Okay, so knight f5, knight d4, aiming to go knight d6, and if knight gets traded by mistake, then e takes d6, and the pawn is unstoppable for a promotion. Okay, king d5, knight g5 is a good move because it attacks f7 square. Black has to play knight h6. Now g4, going for the throat of the black king. Okay, and after this, I don't see any. substantial defense for black here. King d4 may be one alternative. Then h5 comes and takes. Now see, we have come to the knight 4 here. 3 versus 1. It's not a similar position. I did not guarantee you a similar position. But we have come to the position of knight 4 after a lot of maneuver. That is 22 move maneuver. We have reached this knight 4 position. Now let's break down this knight 4 now. I will just break it down here. You can do it, practice it after the session. King d5, king g4 is not possible because knight is coming here. So I'm just trying to calculate one line. Knight takes f7. Is it possible now to play knight takes f7? Any answers? You can just unmute and tell me. Is knight takes f7 a possible idea here? Y or N, guys? Just put it in the chat. Y or N? Is knight takes f7 possible now? Knight takes f7. N into f7. Is it possible? Put Y or N. ज़्यादा सोचो मत. Just put a Y or N. Yes. So, hello. Is my voice audible? Anybody there? हाँ. Just put a Y or N. अरे गलत होगा कोई दिक्कत नहीं है. It's just a part of thing. तो अब बुरा मत मानो, but it's like हम बस सीख रहे हैं. Okay. There is nothing to be ashamed of. Y या N डाल दो या thumbs up डाल दो. Knight takes f7 good है bad है, whatever you feel like. Knight takes f7 is a tactic. ठीक है, मैं जानबूझ के ही पूछ रहा हूँ इस चीज को. You may say that this knight on h6 is guarding f7, but it is a tactic. ठीक है, I'm just asking will this tactic work or not. चलो, I think you are kind of confused. So मैं बता देता हूँ. Knight takes f7 is a blunder. ठीक है, यहाँ पे एक क्वेश्चन मार्क डाल देते हैं. ब्लंडर क्यों है? बात यह है, दिस पॉन कैन बी कैप्चर्ड इन द नेक्स्ट मूव. और उसके बाद आपको अगर याद होगा, इफ यू रिमेंबर rook pawns. Do you remember this session, guys, which I took on 14th? मैंने क्या बोला था? In this rectangle, if the black king reaches, then it's a draw. क्या आप correlate कर पा रहे हो उस बात को यहाँ पे? If this knight sacrifices itself on the next move, and if somehow white sacrifice, let's say king g4, the knight takes e5 मार दिया, and then here we reach, and here here and here. Now it's a queen. ठीक है, और वाइट यहाँ पे जीत रहा है. बट मैंने बोला था नाइट टेक्स f7 ब्लंडर है. क्यों ब्लंडर है? बिकॉज होगा क्या, किंग g4 आप खेलोगे, देन आप किंग e6 पे वापस आ जाओगे. दैट्स द करेक्ट मूव. ठीक है, एंड वन यू कैन नॉट गो किंग g5 येट. सो आपको f5 खेलोगे तो किंग टेक्स f5 मर रहा है. आई मीन सॉरी फॉर द हिंदी. इफ यू प्ले f5, then you have king takes e5 here. I hope you understand it. f5, king takes f5. So f5 is not possible. King g5 is not possible. h6 is not possible because knight is taking this. And white really has no way to progress here. And once you go king to h4, now also knight takes e5 doesn't work because of this, and again king g5. White will be able to promote this h pawn. Okay. So again, white को black को क्या करना होगा? He does not has to get any adventure. वो बस king f5 खेल के आराम से आपके पोजीशन को होल्ड कर सकता है. And this is a table based draw. Okay, table based draw means complete draw है. That's why knight takes f7 doesn't work here. ठीक है. So यहाँ पे ऐसा आप सोच सकते हो, in some positions it may lead, these kind of tactics may lead to a quick win. ठीक है. But okay, I will just push it in the variation thing. यहाँ पे king d5 के बाद white is winning. So यहाँ पे अगर हम सोचें तो एक एस्पेक्ट यहाँ पे what we are getting is knight e4, or let me just promote it, और knight to h7 aiming for f6. ये एक एस्पेक्ट बचता है हमारे पास. तो हम कौन सा फॉलो करते हैं वो, हम नाइट ई फोर फॉलो करते हैं. एम दोनों का वही है, एफ सिक्स पे जाने का. बट आई थिंक किंग ई थ्री भी यहाँ पे बेस्ट मूव है, कोई दिक्कत नहीं है. एंड एनी मूव ऑल्सो वर्क्स हियर. सो किंग ई थ्री, मान लेते हैं किंग ई थ्री बेस्ट मूव कह रहा है कंप्यूटर, तो थोड़ा सा सहारा कंप्यूटर का भी ले लेते हैं. व्हाट डज किंग ई थ्री अचीव इज, आप किंग ई सिक्स नहीं जा सकते, डी सिक्स नहीं जा सकते. सो वाइट नाइट हैज टू मूव. एंड वाई, मैं आपको एक रीजन बता देता हूँ मैंने किंग ई थ्री को कंसिडर करके भी क्यों इग्नोर मारा. बिकॉज यहाँ पे एक नाइट जी फोर या नाइट एफ फाइव का थ्रेट आ रहा है, और यहाँ पे किंग डी थ्री खेलने को कह रहा है. इंजन इज स्टोन वॉल्ट, उसके अंदर इमोशंस नहीं है, एंड इट डजेंट नो द वैल्यू ऑफ टाइम. ठीक है, इट जस्ट स्पिट्स आउट द मूव्स इंस्टेंटेनियसली. बट द पॉइंट इज, कंप्यूटर ये कह रहा है यार यू आर डिफेंडिंग दिस एफ सेवन ऑल्सो, द नाइट हैज टू ड्रॉप बैक सम नाउ. ठीक है, दैट्स द ओनली थिंग टू डू हियर. देन नाइट ई फोर and maybe king e6, and then king to d4 I guess should work here. King to e3, knight f5, and then maybe you can play here king d5. We can go knight f6, and then this. Okay, king g4, knight h6, and king g5. Finally, white king has gotten the place in the heaven. Okay, I mean gotten a place in the heaven means it's just attacking the knight. And if you notice, the white black knight is completely trapped and it's out of moves. It has only one move, knight f5. But now I want you to guess the move here. Make the ceremonial move which wins for white. Come on, please. Yeah, exactly. h6, no way to stop. Knight takes h6, king takes h6. Black tries one last attempt, king f5, but I think it doesn't work. King g7, king takes f4, and very important move, knight d7, defending this pawn, and this pawn is going to be lost. White is winning it. Okay, and finally हमने यहाँ पे exactly वो position reach नहीं किया है, but it's reminiscent of this kind of structure. Okay, so knight 5 here. After king takes, very important move, knight d7. I'll put a double exclamation if any of you manages to play this. And king f5, king takes e7. This pawn is marching forward. Promote to a queen. No need to promote to a rook. Promote to a queen. Checkmate your opponent by using L technique. I hope everybody knows the L technique here, those who have joined today. So that was the only problem which I had to discuss today. Rest, these are all some of the snippets of that position. You can just go and try to solve this on your own, thinking for both the sides. Or what you can do is you can place a bot with your you can play a bot, leeches bot. There is an option to play here, I mean learn here. You can just go and practice, for example this any pattern works here. Okay, or any other, there is a tool called board editor. You can just go and copy this fen. Okay, and paste it in tools, either board editor or analysis board. In analysis board there is an option to paste fen. You can just paste it and this position occurs. Okay, and here there is an option to go for, sorry, just a second, standard. This position comes, and if we copy this fen, this position comes. You can analyze it easily. Or if you want to play this, there is an option to practice with computer as well when you have this arrow kind of thing. Okay, it's your turn. Computer will play it. Computer has a depth of, like, it's a stockfish 16 engine, so it will play on a max level. and you have to defend this and try to win. Okay, यहाँ पे it is showing wrong moves and correct moves, but no issues. You can just do this interactively quite easily. Okay, so that was the only thing I had to discuss. And similarly, you can just do this for two pawn endgame as well. I hope you got the idea of how to defend this. This is also possible. You can just paste the copy paste the FEN from here. Copy this FEN, go to tools, analysis board, click there, and then you click this circle dot which is visible, and you can just practice it whenever you are free. Okay. One last, this is also a kind of difficult position where white only has a kind of 3.8 advantage. The difference between this and the previous which I discussed is here all the pawns of white are passed. Okay, they are marching on the king side, and here the black pawns are marching on the queen side. So both of them don't have any enemies as such in general, but white has to practically win this. Let's just do this quickly in 5 minutes, and thereafter we will just wrap it up. White goes f3, first up, kicking away the knight. Knight doesn't have c5, doesn't have d2, only has d6 to go or g5 to go. Anywhere, I think d6 is better because if he goes g5, then h4 comes in. Okay, then the knight has to shift back, and then this knight d4 trick I don't think works here now. I don't think so because it just surrenders the advantage for black here. In this position, the unique concept is you should not, you should not, okay, note this sentence, you should not exchange the knights in this position until you get a pawn promotion certain. That's the major trick that is involved here. If you notice a knight, it stops a5 from marching forward. So essentially this knight is a precious piece at this point. Black only has b4, and he is also getting blocked by this knight. So knight is a precious gem in this position, which kind of holds black together, white together, and gives a breathing space to the white pieces so that the king can escort all these four pawns to a promotion and win the game easily. It's essentially four pawns versus knight on the king side and two pawns versus knight on the queen side. Okay. So let's say knight e6. You should not go knight d4. I will just make this move, and it is a blunder. Okay. It just goes to minus 4.1 from here. So don't play this. Post variation knight e6, and here I think e4 works fine. Okay, I will just promote this. E4 check, king e5, king f2, aiming to go to king e3. Notice king d4 is not possible here. Neither knight c5 is possible. So black has to play, let's say, a waiting move, b4, king e3, preparing for f4, king d6. No other better move is available. f4, king c6, f5. White pawn is simply marching forward. Now, at this position, I want you to answer one last thing. Can we exchange the knights now? Put a Y or N in the chat. Can we hold back a little bit, or can we exchange the knight now? Y or N, or put a thumbs up if yes. If not, just put an N in the chat box. Hello. Can anyone answer? Okay. Exchanging is good, you are saying. Maybe possible. Okay. Anybody else? Whoso are there? Shujal, can you answer? Not best. Okay. Balaji, Shujal, you are the only ones left here. Please answer it. I mean, I'm not asking accurate here. Yeah, maybe no, I guess. Okay, fine. Okay, so three of you have answered, and my gut feeling also says that it's too soon to exchange this knight. Why? King takes c5, and I have to play a bit of precisity here. f6, king d6, e5 check. Notice that this pawn cannot be taken because, as I said in previous sessions, if you take this pawn, you are allowing this to promote. Okay, these pawns kind of defend themselves pretty strongly. This can be taken because it is being directly supported, and this cannot be taken because this pawn is indirectly supporting. What it says is you have to go to f7. So king e6, and here you can go g4 and a5, g5, a4, king d4. No, sorry, king d3 here. King d4 is a blunder. I'll just mark it as a blunder. Why? Because then a3 comes in and king d3 a2. This goes to a promotion. That's why. So king d3 is the best move here. Good move. And after a2, I think there is something like g6 or some. It's lost for black, kind of. So I think king d3 is also bad. Let's go to somewhere a4. Then king d3 here also. a3, king c2. I messed it up here. Actually, here we have to go king d3. It was just a mistake on my part. Here we have to go king d3. I mean, you have to remember these tactical motives, and it's hard to remember all these in a blitz game. That's why if you go a3, king c2 covers this, and a2, white king is right on time to defend this pawn. b3 also this applies to white. He cannot capture this. Both the pawns protect each other. b3 directly protects a2, but a2 indirectly protects a3. It kind of gives immunity to a3, b3 pawn, that if you capture this pawn, I will promote to a queen. So b3, and white is having g6. There is no way to stop this. g7, and it's promotion. But if you feel knight takes c5, we dwell we dwelled on this decision that we should trade or not. Maybe yes, but it's little bit tricky. Okay. So instead, I prefer to play knight to d4 check here. Okay. Because it at least preserves the idea of going forward. King d6, maybe g5, g4 now. Now b3 comes in, and it has gotten a bit trickier with g5, b2, and this may be a lost as well. So b3, you can just go in with king e2, but then knight takes e4 comes in. That's the only issue. Then b2, king c2, you can stop this. But then also knight f2 also comes in, and we blunder a flurry of pawns here. Okay, so knight c5, I think either knight d4 should work, or knight a5 can also be possible. But knight d4, check, king d6, and maybe knight e2 should be the correct move here. a5, and push the pawns to g4, a4, bring the king on here, g5, a3, bring the knight here, and f6, b2, f7, king here, and black is somehow tricking you to promote to a queen. So knight c5 exchange is possible, but you have to remember this long sequence. I mean, not remember, but you have to just intuitively go in and stop these pawns. This is one variation, and it's actually playable. And if not, I think knight a5, king a5, knight a5 check, king b5 comes in. Then the knight becomes kind of trapped in. That's why knight a5 becomes a blunder. And knight d4, and bit skeptical here. It shows winning, let's say king d6 and knight e2. We played this, and here b3 is met by king d4. That's the resource we missed, I guess. And then knight c3, knight b3 check, king d3. I will now off the engine, go for a5 and g4, king e5, a4 is not possible. A4 is possible, sorry, because now it's white to move. He can play g4. A4 is possible because if you take this knight, I will promote it to a queen with check, and it's win for black. Okay, so a4, g6, king h6, e5 check, sacrificing both of them to get a promotion. And here you go h5, defending this pawn. A3 is possible. Now you go king c2, knight d4 check, and king b1. Maybe knight takes f5 is also possible. But here if we allow f6 check, then this king g8, e6, a2, and f7, king g7, h6 check, king f8, h7, and white promotes first here. Sorry, black promotes first, and then this is also a queen. This is completely lost. So there are a lot of tricks here. So I recommend, maybe, if you are confident that you can go and march on with the king here and defend this position, then you can exchange it. Otherwise, d12 on it, it will be a little bit challenging, and you need some time to think it as well. So ponder down it. Knight d4 is winning. Then we have, idea is to go knight d4 and then to go knight e2, followed by march up these pawns and simultaneously trying to bring this king downwards to stop them from promoting. But in this position, the material, more material we are keeping, black is trying to get some counterplay on the queen side. That's why it's a bit trickier and difficult to solve than this position, for example. And this is the draw position. What happens is, this is the last one. If you, it's easy to draw as black, because let's say he goes knight d3, I can go king e6. No, not king e6. Here we go knight d6 here. King e6 is not good. If we go knight d6, the idea is we can just swap off this pawn with the knight, and we have seen that there's a command which comes like timeout versus insufficient material, or draw by insufficient material. That will happen here. With the extra knight, what you have to basically do is you have to just go to knight b5 and capture this with the support of king, and it's easier to do. I will show you. King e3, knight b5, d5, and king f6 maybe, king to e4, king to e7, king to e5, and here knight c7 is also good, but I do not recommend it. You may scream for d6 check, but king d7, even if he takes, it's a draw. That's it. So it's possible at this, but I do not recommend you playing it. I prefer knight a7 instead, because d6 and then knight c5, king c6, d7, king to d7, king e6, and white knight is just in time to stop this. Okay, and knight a6, king d8. It's a sure shot draw. That's it. This pawn will soon get captured. For example, if we go knight c5, black goes knight b8, and no matter whatever white plays, knight takes b7 is on the board, and it's a draw. Okay, knight takes d7, it's a draw. So I will just mark it as draw, equal position. I hope you were able to understand the nuances of knight plus two pawns versus knight, various possibilities that may arise in your game. If any questions, you can just ask. Knight b3, knight d2. Where? 923. I guess you are asking in that opposite thing. Knight b3, knight d2 may be possible, but Just let me just go back there. Yeah, knight b3. I mean, knight is controlling here, right? So how can I go knight d3 in this position? That was the only issue that I was having. But rest, what we can do is knight e2 can be possible, and a5 can be promoted. I mean, stop from promoting. White. Here, knight b3 is not possible. And if you are referring somewhere here, here you are, I think, referring to knight d2 at this point. When you are going knight c5, here you are referring knight d2, I guess. Yeah. So here black can just play a5 fearlessly, or he can also play b3 here. The point is he is promoting, trying to promote, but he needs the support of a pawn as well. We also are not fearing this. We are promoting, trying to promote f6, and b2 is not possible. And I think knight d2 is fantastic defensive, because the point is you are stopping b1, and black a6 pawn needs 1 2 3 4 5 squares to reach to promotion, whereas white needs only 3 squares. And even if king somehow makes it, then we can just guard it and push our h pawn forward. Yeah, it's a nice defensive resource. Let me just promote it. If you have knight d2, knight c2 is also possible. Knight d2 is also possible, because then you have a5, f6, a4, f7 is unstoppable. So a4 is not the recipe here. He goes e5 check, not takeable. Maybe we can take it, because then f7, knight d7 comes in. But then we have knight c4 check, king f6, and knight takes a5 also, and king a5. We go king f4. It makes a little bit harder. So king d6, maybe just go g4, king e6, g5, king f7, e5, a4. It's just a pawn race now. King e6, g6, a3, g7, and king f7. Let's say, what is the best move here? I think h6 should be the one. And a2, h7, a1 queen, g8 equals to queen, and it's a checkmate. I hope you got it. And yeah, knight d2 was a fantastic find. Well done. I mean, knight d2, it seemed passive to my eyes. That's why I didn't play it. But it's a fantastic defense. So thank you for suggesting this. And yeah, so thank you guys for joining today. I hope you got the feel of how difficult it may get in the end games while playing. It is possible that it may get typical. This position is opposite position pawn is kind of rare. If you play 100 games, then maybe 5 games will feature this endgame. And in general, knight plus 2 pawns may occur only in like 20 games of them. Even if you reach 70 games, then I guess 20 will have this knight endgame somewhere or the other. So thank you for joining. I'm just stopping the recording now. If you have any questions, you can ask, or otherwise